Tokyo's two faces, light and shadow. Japan, land of the rising sun, a place of serene temples, of neon-drenched cityscapes. Tokyo pulses with life, a vibrant heart beating in a nation known for order. Millions move through its veins daily. They follow the rules, they respect the system. It's a society built on harmony, on the predictable rhythm of existence. From the outside it appears seamless, almost perfect. The trains run on time, the streets are impeccably clean. Courtesy is a national language. This is the Japan the world sees. The image, carefully curated and proudly displayed. It's a picture of safety, of community, of a people working in unison towards a common good, a beacon of modernity. But every light casts a shadow. Beneath the gleaming surface, darker currents flow, unseen, unspoken. Tokyo has its hidden alleys, its forgotten corners where the bright lights don't quite reach. Here, stories unfold that don't make the glossy travel brochures. Stories of lives that intersect with the underbelly, the yakuza, the hidden worlds of power and influence that operate by different codes. This other Japan is just as real, a stark contrast to the peaceful facade, a reminder that no society is without its darkness. The disappearances began like whispers, faint at first, easily dismissed as isolated incidents. A young couple near the sea, a student walking home. Each case on its own was a tragedy, a puzzle for local police. But the pieces were scattered, separated by geography and time. In Niigata Prefecture, November 1977, a 13-year-old schoolgirl, Megumi Yokota, vanished. She was walking home from badminton practice. One moment she was there, a bright young life full of promise. The next she was gone. Her path was familiar, the distance short, yet she never made it home. The search was extensive, desperate, but it yielded nothing. No clues, no witnesses, just an aching void. Then there were others. Rumiko Masumoto, a 24-year-old office clerk, disappeared in Kagoshima in 1978. She was with her fiancé, Shuichi Ichikawa, a 23-year-old telephone company employee. They had told their families they were going to see the sunset at Fukiage Beach. Their car was found abandoned, their belongings were still inside. It was as if they had simply stepped out for a moment and never returned. The sea offered no answers, only a vast, indifferent expanse. The local police were stumped. These were not runaways, these were not typical crimes of passion or opportunity. The absence of any discernible motive was itself a terrifying clue. The victims shared a chilling commonality. They were ordinary. They were not involved in dangerous activities. They were not wealthy individuals who might be targets for ransom. They were simply living their lives. The term kamikakushi, spirited away, began to circulate. As the years passed, the isolated incidents began to form a disturbing mosaic. Each new disappearance added another piece to a puzzle no one wanted to solve. The police, initially treating each case separately, started to notice unsettling similarities. The victims were often young. They were often near the coast. They vanished without a trace, as if plucked from existence by an invisible hand. There were no signs of struggle, no witnesses who saw anything truly out of the ordinary. This wasn't the work of opportunistic criminals. This was something else, something more organized, something far more sinister. The lack of typical criminal evidence was, in itself, evidence of a different kind of perpetrator. The coastal communities, once idyllic and peaceful, became haunted by these disappearances. Parents warned their children to be careful near the beaches, especially after dark. A palpable sense of unease settled over these towns. The sea, once a friend, now seemed to hold a terrifying secret. Fishermen reported strange radio transmissions, unidentified boats lurking just beyond territorial waters. The fear was that the threat was not coming from within Japan, but from across the water, from the dark expanse of the Sea of Japan. The whispers eventually found a name: North Korea. It was a chilling thought, a rogue state, isolated and hostile, reaching across the sea to snatch Japanese citizens. In the late 1980s and 1990s, testimonies from North Korean defectors began to surface. These were not vague rumors, they were specific, detailed accounts. Defectors spoke of seeing individuals who looked Japanese, who spoke Japanese, living under guard in North Korea. They described special training facilities where abductees were allegedly forced to teach Japanese language and culture to North Korean intelligence agents. The purpose? To help these agents infiltrate South Korea and Japan, to blend in seamlessly. These claims were initially met with skepticism by some in the Japanese government and public. It seemed too outlandish, too much like a Cold War spy thriller. North Korea officially denied everything. They dismissed the accusations as fabrications, as anti-Pyongyang propaganda. Yet, the evidence mounted. Former North Korean spies captured or defected corroborated the stories. They spoke of abduction operations carried out by special units, using small, fast boats that could slip into Japanese waters undetected, usually under the cover of darkness. The targets were chosen carefully, often for their specific knowledge, or simply for their identities, which could be co-opted. The motive, as pieced together from these testimonies, was chillingly pragmatic. North Korea needed Japanese language instructors for its spies. It needed Japanese identities for its agents. Section 5. A shocking admission, truth, and new torments. The diplomatic landscape shifted dramatically in September 2002. Japanese Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi made a historic visit to Pyongyang. He met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-il. The world watched. During this summit, the unthinkable happened. Kim Jong-il admitted it. He confessed that North Korean agents had indeed abducted Japanese citizens. He offered an apology. For the families who had waited decades, it was a bombshell. A confirmation of their worst fears, yet also the first official acknowledgement from the perpetrators. North Korea admitted to abducting 13 individuals. They claimed 8 of them had died. They said 5 were still alive. These 5, they announced, would be allowed to return to Japan for a visit. The news sent shockwaves through Japan. There was a sense of vindication for the families and activists who had campaigned tirelessly, but the relief was quickly overshadowed by grief and anger. 8 dead? How? When? The explanations offered were vague, unsatisfactory, and for the families of those declared dead, the news was a devastating blow, a confirmation of loss without the solace of closure. In October 2002, the 5 surviving abductees, Yasushi Chimura, Fuki Hamamoto, Kaoru Hasuike, Yukiko Okudo, and Hitomi Soga, returned to Japan. Their reunion with their families was emotional, broadcast live across the nation. They had been gone for over 2 decades. They had been forced to live new lives, learn a new language, suppress their identities. Section 6. The Anatomy of a Lie. Pyongyang's dubious explanations. The explanations provided by North Korea for the deaths of 8 abductees were riddled with inconsistencies. They were, to put it mildly, unbelievable. Death certificates were produced, but they were crude, lacking basic verifiable details. Causes of death were listed as gas poisoning, heart attacks, traffic accidents, even suicide. For individuals who were young and healthy when abducted, these explanations stretched credulity to its breaking point. Megumi Yokota, who was only 13 when she vanished, was said to have married a South Korean abductee, had a daughter, suffered from depression, and then committed suicide in 1994. Her parents, Shigeru and Saki Yokota, found this impossible to accept. The evidence provided by Pyongyang only deepened the suspicion. For instance, the remains presented as Megumi Yokota's were sent to Japan for DNA testing. The results were shocking. The DNA was not hers. In fact, the ashes contained DNA from multiple unrelated individuals. This blatant deception fueled outrage in Japan. It suggested not just incompetence, but a deliberate attempt to cover up the truth. If North Korea was lying about this, what else were they lying about? The families of the other 7 declared dead-faced similar stonewalling and questionable information. Each detail provided by Pyongyang seemed to crumble under scrutiny. The discrepancies were not minor errors. They were fundamental flaws in North Korea's narrative. Section 7. Decades of Anguish, the family's unrelenting quest. For the families of the abductees, the decades following the disappearances were a relentless torment. Imagine your child, your sibling, your spouse vanishing without a word. The not knowing is a special kind of hell. Shigeru and Saki Yokota, Megumi's parents, became emblematic of this struggle. They campaigned tirelessly, not just for Megumi but for all the abductees. They traveled across Japan, then around the world, sharing their story, pleading for help. Their faces, etched with grief but also with unwavering determination, became familiar to millions. They aged before the public eye. Their personal tragedy transformed into a national cause. These families formed support groups like the National Association for the Rescue of Japanese Kidnapped by North Korea, or NARCAN. They organized rallies, petition drives, and symposiums. They met with politicians, diplomats, and human rights activists. They refused to let their loved ones be forgotten. Their persistence was remarkable. They faced bureaucratic inertia, political sensitivities, and the sheer indifference of time. Yet, they pressed on. Each small piece of news, each defector's testimony, was scrutinized, analyzed, and used to fuel their demands for action. They learn to navigate the complex worlds of international diplomacy and media advocacy, driven by a singular, powerful motivation to bring their families home. The emotional toll on these families has been immense. They have lived in a state of suspended grief, unable to mourn, unable to move on. Anniversaries, birthdays, the day of disappearance became annual rituals of pain and renewed resolve. They carried photos of their missing relatives everywhere. They spoke of them in the present tense. Beyond the official count, the lingering unknowns. North Korea admitted to abducting 13 Japanese citizens, but many believe the true number is far higher. Activists compiled lists of suspicious disappearances from coastal regions. These are the Tokutei Shisosha, cases where abduction by North Korea cannot be ruled out. Families remain in painful limbo, their search unrecognized. The criteria for official recognition are stringent. Compelling evidence is needed, often from defectors. Stories of fishermen who never returned are deeply suspicious. North Korea denies further abductions, dismissing claims as baseless. Returned abductees highlighted gaps in knowledge. Fragments of information offer clues but underscore vast unknowns. Section 9, An Unhealed Wound, Japan's Enduring Abduction Trauma. The North Korean abductions have left an indelible scar on the Japanese psyche. It's a wound that refuses to heal, a constant reminder of vulnerability and unresolved injustice. For a nation that prides itself on safety and sovereignty, the idea that a foreign power could simply snatch its citizens from its shores is a profound shock. It has fueled a deep-seated distrust of North Korea, complicating diplomatic relations for decades. The issue remains a major stumbling block in any potential normalization talks between Tokyo and Pyongyang. No Japanese government can afford to ignore the public's demand for a full resolution. The emotional impact resonates far beyond the affected families. It has become a collective trauma. The blue ribbon, symbolizing the campaign for the abductees' return, is a common sight in Japan, worn by politicians, celebrities, and ordinary citizens alike. It signifies solidarity, remembrance, and a quiet determination. The story of Megumi Yokota, in particular, has become a national symbol of lost innocence and state-sponsored cruelty. Documentaries, books, and even manga have explored the abductions, keeping the issue in the public consciousness and educating younger generations about this dark chapter in their nation's recent history. The lingering questions continue to haunt. Why these specific individuals? What truly happened to those declared dead by North Korea? Are there other abductees still alive in the Hermit Kingdom, their existence unacknowledged? These uncertainties fuel a sense of frustration and helplessness. Despite international pressure, UN sanctions, and countless diplomatic efforts, North Korea has offered no further credible information or cooperation since 2002. The regime's opacity and its history of deceit make any pronouncements from Pyongyang inherently suspect. For Japan, achieving closure seems an almost impossible task as long as the